Morning, a Newport News man took a plea deal in connection to the death of a Williamsburg woman in early 2023. Aonesty McClelland pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and for using or displaying a firearm in the shooting death of 18-year-old Aonesty Selby.
It was a cold January evening in Virginia, the kind of night where silence hangs heavy in the air, broken only by the crunch of tires on gravel. Somewhere deep in Isle of Wight County, a borrowed Dodge Charger crept down an unlit dirt logging road, the headlights swallowed by bare winter trees. In the passenger seat sat an 18-year-old young woman whose life was supposed to be just beginning. Her name was Aonesty Selby. Three days earlier, she had celebrated her 18th birthday, smiling, laughing, surrounded by the people who loved her. Her dreams stretched wide ahead of her. High school graduation, cosmetology school, building a career doing what she loved, and perhaps one day opening her own business. But on this night, those dreams would be silenced with a single pull of a trigger. What happened here was not a random act of violence. It was the result of a relationship that had spiraled out of control. A relationship that began only weeks earlier and would end in the most unthinkable way. And yet, this story is not just about how Aonesty died. It's about how she lived, the decisions that led her down that rural road, the silent warnings she tried to send, and the fight her family waged to find the truth. Stay with me, because by the time you hear everything, you'll understand why her loved ones say justice has never truly been served. Aonesty grew up in the beautiful Outer Banks of North Carolina, where the sound of crashing waves and the smell of salt water were part of everyday life. She was deeply rooted in her family, the kind of young woman who made sure every gathering was filled with laughter, who entertained younger cousins without being asked, who had a natural warmth that drew children to her. She had a rare ability to make people feel seen, and she poured that into her dreams. From a young age, she was fascinated with beauty, style, and the transformation that comes from a good haircut or a perfectly applied color. She imagined herself in a salon, using her creativity to help others feel confident. In late 2022, she made a big decision to move from the Outer Banks to Williamsburg, Virginia. It was a chance to finish her senior year at War Hill High School while living with relatives. Moving to a new place as a teenager isn't easy, but Aonesty embraced it with optimism. New city, new friends, new opportunities. She remained that dependable friend you could call at midnight when life felt heavy, the one who would listen without judgment. And she was the family member who checked in on everyone, never too busy to show up when it mattered. Not long after moving, Aonesty met Aonesty McClelland. He was 21, living in Newport News, and at first nothing seemed out of the ordinary. He could be charming, knew how to say the right things, and for a young woman in a new city, the attention probably felt exciting. But it didn't take long for cracks to show. Their relationship was on and off, almost from the start, full of small arguments, short reconciliations, and a pattern of emotional highs and lows. While Aonesty focused on her future, school, career, independence, McClelland's life seemed unsettled. He didn't have the same sense of direction, and his actions suggested a need for control more than a desire to build something together. Still, Aonesty had a forgiving heart. She believed in giving people second chances, maybe even third. By early January, they were back on speaking terms. And on the night of January 11th, just a day after her birthday celebrations, McClelland sent her money for an Uber to his apartment. That ride would be the first step toward the last night of her life. That evening, instead of staying at the apartment, McClelland borrowed his brother's 2021 Dodge Charger and his brother's 9mm handgun. The excuse? A drive. The city lights of Newport News faded quickly in the rearview mirror. Street lamps gave way to long stretches of black road. On either side, the silhouettes of winter trees loomed closer, their bare branches clawing at the night sky. They drove deeper into isolation, until there were no houses, no traffic, no sounds except the rumble of the Charger's engine. Then McClelland turned down a narrow dirt path, a logging road most people would never know existed. The car rolled to a stop. The air inside grew heavy. What had started as casual conversation began to turn sharp. Tones shifted. The warmth in his voice vanished. Aonesty felt it, the unease that creeps up the back of your neck when you know something isn't right. She didn't panic, at least not outwardly. Instead, she did something quietly, instinctively. She opened her phone and shared her live location with a close friend. No explanation, no dramatic text. Just a pin on the map, a silent "look where I am," just in case. Minutes later, the argument escalated. Somewhere between words and silence, the gun was in his hand. One shot. The sound shattered the stillness of the woods. Aonesty's life ended instantly. She had turned 18 just one day earlier, and now everything she could have been was gone.
Justice won't bring her back to me, but it'll make me feel like I didn't fail her. And in there, I feel like we failed her because we aren't able to get the right justice for her.
McClellan didn't check if she was breathing. He didn't call for help. He simply panicked. He left her there, in the freezing darkness, and drove away as if distance could erase what he had done. The location pin she had sent would not be opened for 2 more days. By then, it wouldn't be a warning. It would be a map leading her family to the place where she had been left alone. 2 days without contact from Aonesty felt unnatural. She wasn't the type to vanish without a word, especially after just celebrating her birthday. No texts, no calls, no posts on social media. By the morning of January 13th, worry had hardened into dread. Her family reported her missing. Word spread quickly among friends and relatives. That's when the friend who had received her location finally opened it. The pin dropped in the middle of nowhere, deep inside Isle of Wight County. Police told the family to wait. The location was on private property. Searching themselves could risk disturbing evidence. But waiting wasn't an option. Her mother, her aunt, other loved ones. They got in a car, crossed the James River Bridge, and followed winding rural roads until they reached the spot. The January air was biting, each breath sharp in their lungs. They began walking the narrow dirt paths, hearts pounding with a mix of hope and terror. And then, they saw her. Lying still in the cold. The screams tore through the silence. The kind of sound that comes from the deepest part of a person. Raw, broken, impossible to forget. Any small shred of hope they'd been clinging to collapsed in that moment. They called the police from the scene. That location pin, Aonesty's quiet, desperate act of self-protection, had led them to her. By the time deputies arrived, the dirt road was a crime scene. The cold air carried the weight of unanswered questions. Who had brought her here, and why?
It's my understanding she was set to graduate high school in May. She should be planning what her future entails, and instead we are trying to plan out a memorial service.
According to the medical examiner's office, Selby died because of a single gunshot wound. Captain Tommy Potter with Isle of Wight County Sheriff's Office says her death is under investigation, but says they do not believe that anyone dumped her body there.
And for whatever reasons, people have decided to either to murder them here in our county or to dump the bodies here. However, that just strengthens our investigators' resolve.
Captain Potter says they know Selby took an Uber to Newport News the night after her birthday. Her family and friends are urging those who know anything to come forward.
There's never a place that we've ever heard of her visiting or going to.
As of I know, she never really seemed to involve herself in anything that could potentially put her in danger.
Turn yourself in and apologize. Maybe there will be hope for you.
So far, no suspects are in custody, but deputies are looking for those who have any information about Selby's whereabouts on January 11th and January 12th.
Investigators began piecing together the last known movements of Aonesty Selby. The most important clue came quickly. She had taken an Uber to Newport News on the night of January 11th. The payment? Sent to her through Cash App, by one name, Darius McClellan. It didn't take long for detectives to learn more. Friends and family confirmed he was someone she had been seeing on and off for about 2 months. The relationship, they said, had been unstable from the start. And then came the detail that made everything click. McClellan's own brother told investigators that he had been with Aonesty at the apartment that night, before leaving in his brother's Dodge Charger. He also mentioned something else, a missing 9mm handgun that had been kept in his nightstand. The same gun McClellan had borrowed that night. In the days after the murder, detectives discovered that McClellan had tried to sell that gun to an acquaintance. The sale didn't happen. Police recovered the firearm, and ballistics testing would later match it to the fatal shot that ended Aonesty's life. Vehicle tracking and surveillance footage placed the Charger in the area of Blue Ridge Trail, the same remote logging path where her body was found on the night of the murder. Every piece of evidence closed the gap between suspicion and certainty. The gun, the car, the Cash App payment, the location data, all pointing to one man. When police finally brought McClellan in, he started with denial. He didn't know what happened, he claimed. He hadn't been there. But the evidence was too strong, too specific. As the walls closed in, his story began to crack. Eventually, he admitted it. He told investigators they had driven out to that spot to talk and smoke. They argued about their relationship, and somewhere in the middle of it, he pulled the trigger. One shot. Panic. Flight. He left her there and went home. On January 16, 2023, just 3 days after her body was found, Aonesty McClellan was arrested in Newport News. The charges: second-degree murder and the use or display of a firearm in the commission of a felony. For her family, the arrest brought answers, but
Wednesday
not relief.
morning.
I don't feel like anything this court could do is actual justice. My soul will never be at peace. Daughter's body, that's a torment I will live with for the rest of my life.
But today, Mercer and her family believe justice wasn't done after an Isle of Wight County judge accepted a plea deal for Aonesty McClelland in connection to the murder.
The man who had taken Aonesty's life was still alive, still able to breathe, still able to speak her name. For more than 2 years, the case wound its way through the courts. Every hearing was another wound for her family, another day of sitting feet away from the man who had left her to die in the cold. And then, on July 9, 2025, McClellan stood in court, and when sentencing day came, they knew one thing for sure. No number the judge spoke would ever match the sentence they were already serving. A lifetime without Aonesty. Aonesty Selby's story is more than a police report, more than court documents, more than a headline. It's the laughter she brought into family gatherings, the way she could calm a crying baby with a smile, the dreams she carried and the courage she showed by quietly sharing her location that night. A final act that gave her family the chance to find her. Her life mattered. Her story matters. And it still echoes today as a reminder of how quickly control, jealousy, and violence can steal everything from someone with so much ahead of them. When we tell stories like Aonesty's, it's easy to focus on the crime, the investigation, the arrest, the trial. But that's not what defines her. She was more than a victim. She was a daughter, a sister, a friend. She was the person who brought light into rooms that felt dark, the one who dreamed of making people feel beautiful, not just on the outside, but inside too.
Aonesty's family waited more than 2 years for a trial. They say today's guilty plea is simply not enough.
What he took from me, I could never get back.
For Aonesty Selby's family, it was a devastating day in court Wednesday morning. Murder.
It's very hurtful. We've lost so much. We've lost everything.
McClelland pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and the use or display of a firearm in committing a felony. With these charges combined, McClelland could face up to 43 years in prison. But Mercer says this deal is not enough for her and her family. She believes McClelland should face first-degree murder, a charge that would have the potential to put him in prison for life.
And I just want to make sure that he never gets to take anything else from anybody else.
McClelland's sentencing is set to be held on November 24th.
3 days after her 18th birthday, that light was stolen. Not by chance, not by fate, but by someone she knew. Someone she trusted enough to get into a car with. It's a story that should never have happened, and one that reminds us of the quiet dangers that can hide inside unstable relationships. Sometimes, it's not the stranger you need to fear. Sometimes, it's the person you think you know. Her family will never stop feeling her absence. Every holiday, every birthday, every ordinary day. And as for justice, no sentence, no matter how long, will ever bring her back. So tonight, let her story be more than a headline you scroll past. Let it be a reminder. to listen to your instincts, to check on the people you love, and to never stay silent when you feel something isn't right. Because Aonesty Selby's life mattered, and it still matters now. If her story touched you, if you believe it deserves to be heard, make sure you never miss the next one. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and join us as we continue to tell the stories that must be told. Because some voices are gone, and it's up to us to make sure they're never forgotten.